Our created world reveals to us so much about the creator of it. The psalmist knew this 3,000 years ago and left behind the stirring words that we have heard from the 8th Psalm. When I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars that you have established, what are human beings that you are mindful of them? Mortals, that you care for them. The vastness of the universe, dropping into being from the very fingertips of God, suggests the size and splendor, the tremendous creative power of God. And his heart was stirred into admiration and praise. Now, I submit that each of us has had this experience at one point or another. Perhaps we had it stargazing, as did the psalmist, but maybe instead we felt it clearing that last ridge and coming to the very top of the mountain, discovering that above you now is nothing but sky, with peak after peak stretching off to the horizon beneath you. Or maybe you experienced it wading out into the ocean at the beach. Water rising above your waist, above your neck, and now the great tidal currents lifting you up as if you were a feather, tossing you back toward the shore, reminding you that there are powers in this world far greater than your own. Oh God, we think in such moments, even if we can't breathe to speak, we think to ourselves, oh God, how majestic is your name in all the earth. The creation has much to teach us about the Creator. Now, some of the poets have gazed at large things to see the hand of God, but some have turned their sights instead to the tiny, the nearly imperceptible, the wonder of the Creator revealed not so much in the size and magnitude of it all, but in the detail of each small thing. Hence, William Blake. To see the world in a grain of sand and heaven in a wild flower. To hold infinity in the palm of your hand and infinity in an hour. And surely we have done this too, sitting by the seaside, letting a handful of sand slip between your fingers, dusting your hands until only the tiniest specks remain, each a thing so tiny as to appear inconsequential, and yet somehow perfect. Or crossing a mountain meadow and pausing to crouch and to look and to find the tiny blooming flower that can somehow survive even at this great altitude. So lovely, so perfect. Or to uncurl the newborn baby's tiny finger, marveling at last at the nail at the tip, prepared already in the first moment of life to protect. And in those moments our hearts are stirred, and the words rise unbidden to our lips. Oh God, our God, how majestic is your name in all this earth. The creation has much to teach us about the Creator. And there are other lessons too, waiting in the creation, lessons to point our wandering hearts toward God. I read Henry David Thoreau's Walden for the first time in a book group when I was just 13, and not surprisingly, I missed the passage that I read this morning. Not until this, my 60th year, did I notice and catch the significance of the lesson to which he bore witness. All New England, he said, was talking about a worm growing in a table, an apple made of apple wood, more than 60 years before. A seed, an egg, waiting for the time to be right to hatch, suddenly, for reasons of its own, bursting into new life, chewing its way to freedom, restored to life, doing what life does, living. As an image, as a metaphor, it warms our hearts, it thrills our souls, it boggles our minds. Life out of death, new out of old, apparently finished, never quite finished after all, in the hands of an ever-restless, ever-creating God. Oh God, we say, our God, how majestic is your name through all the earth. Creation has much to teach us about the Creator. Or take this lesson. Most appropriate on this day when we blessed our high school graduates, no longer children, on their way to adult lives that will be bigger and better and bolder than we can imagine in our parental angst as we worry about sending them off into the wide, wide world. Now, I have told you this story in a sermon before, but it's so perfect for today that it bears repeating. In Stonington Harbor, down East Maine, sits Russ Island. And when you have kayaked across the harbor channel and around the tip of Russ Island, the ocean opens up before you. Russ is inhabited by a few people, and on this particular day was occupied too by an osprey, who had built her nest atop the tallest telephone pole on the shoreline. Now, osprey, of course, are great raptors. They can stand as much as 2 feet tall, and their wingspans can be 5 or 6 feet. Their nests are correspondingly enormous, made of great tangles of sticks and leaves and limbs, and their nests are unmistakable when you see them. You know exactly what you're looking at. That morning in our kayaks, we watched a great female osprey return to her nest, landing with great grace. And then we noticed she seemed to be stirring around. And so we stopped paddling for a moment and watched. We waited and watched, riveted, as one by one the great bird nudged her hatchlings to the edge of the nest and then, with her great wing, knocked them out. They fell at first like stones, straight down and gathering speed, and then each one opened their wings, and suddenly they were in flight, having come into themselves in fullness. And we watched them frolic together for the better part of half an hour. One need be neither an ornithologist nor a theologian to understand that the Creator nudges the creation forward at every turn to fulfill our potential, to find new life in the becoming of our full selves. And when we remember this great truth, we say, "Oh God, our God, how majestic is your name in all the earth." The creation has much to teach us about the Creator. My friends, as creatures of the great Creator, we are called to show that we are learning lessons that the creation has to teach us. We are called to live lives of wonder and awe before that which God has made, and never to think for a moment that this creation is ours to do with solely as we please. We are called to object to every notion that the world exists only for the purpose of human beings extracting from it whatever it is we want. And we are called to remember that God works through the power of resurrection, that even as the worm slumbers in the applewood table, even as the caterpillar spins her cocoon, even as our lives settle into deep habits that we do again and again, day after day, even the things that have ceased to bring us joy, that out of this apparent death, God can and will and is stirring new life into being. And we are called as people of faith to remember and to teach that though the nest is comfortable and safe, the nest is not what birds are made for. Called to embody the bold leap from the nest, from what is comfortable and confining, into the open skies of new possibility. We know, as the poets have known, that the creation has much to teach us about the Creator. And so I call upon us this summer to open our eyes and our ears, our hearts and our souls, that we may see the stars in the heavens and be stirred to wonder, that we may see the world in a grain of sand and be stilled into reverence, that we may seek to leave the courage of the comfortable nests so that we may learn new ways of being, that we may never forget that the power of God is the power of resurrection, so that out of what all too often feels like lifelessness and hopelessness, God is yet stirring us into greater light and truth than we have ever known. This summer, go, friends, into the world and love it and learn of God. Amen.